Just believe in yourself. Affirm your confidence before a mirror. Or the classic one, when it comes to stage fright, especially, visualize your audience in their underwear. And that's quite intriguing because we need to really find whoever started that narrative. I don't see how that relaxes anybody's nerve. I mean, if it works for you, I would like to know how you're able to do that. In today's video, I want to teach you how to be extremely confident. So let's look at definitions. Now, the word confident has Latin roots, which sort of means to trust or having faith altogether. It's from the word con and fidere, which means to trust fully. It's not about mood, it's not about self esteem. It is to trust whether in yourself, in God, or in your own abilities, or in someone else. Now, this definition is extremely critical for the conversation I want us to have today because if confidence means trust, then you cannot necessarily be lacking in trust, but be trusting in what you lack. And the logic here is simple. It is that we do not have the capacity to lack the energies and tools that are relevant for our expression. So it's like you also cannot be indisciplined. You can't lack faith. You can't lack belief. You can only use those things in a sense where it doesn't give you what you want, right? So you can have faith, but in the direction of what you don't want. So the real question when it comes to the conversation of confidence as trust is not whether you lack trust or whether you lack confidence. It's really about where that trust is placed. Because when you say you lack confidence, you are communicating as though confidence is something you can lack, but it's not. You are essentially saying you don't trust yourself. But if you don't trust yourself, why do you hold on to the story of that doubt? Why do you believe in your incapacity? That means you trust in your doubt and you trust in your sense of inadequacy, meaning that you are more confident in your tendency to fail than in the likelihood that you would succeed. So you're basically hedging your bets around what you find more probable. That's trust. That's confidence. However you want to put it, the fact that you do not like the outcome does not mean that the principle is not engaged, because confidence isn't something you become, it's something you already are. And based on that premise, you allocate appropriately. So you are not trying to be confident, you already are confident. Your crisis cannot be about how to be more confident, but how to discern your confidence and release the story that keeps you circling around that orbit through precise, aligned actions. Because you're confident, you're trusting. It's the reason why you take the actions or not currently. And as a matter of truth, you must recognize that you are always a source, and you must never allocate the source to something else in a bid to access what was never outside of you. Everything you would ever be, everything you would ever do, and everything you will ever have at the highest level is all in you. You need to be able to discern, then reallocate so that your reality is reconfigured to the consciousness that you want it to mirror. Now, the design of God is such that all creation as we know it is encoded with all resources that is necessary for its completion, its multiplication, and even its expression at the highest level. So, for example, in a seed is a potential for fruit. It needs a potential for multiple fruit, for other seeds, even for things like clothing, possibly, or furniture. So, what that means is you cannot not be confident. That is suggesting that that seed does not exist. And if the seed does not exist, it cannot produce any fruit. So you can be confident in the probabilities that cause you to collapse instead of ascend. You can be confident based on who you don't want to be rather than who you want to be. You can be confident based on what you don't want to have rather than what you want to have. Now the conversation shifts when you recognize this, because then you recognize that the choice is now yours. So the question then is, will you continue to be confident in your inadequacy? Will you continue to be trusting in your obvious incapacities? Will you continue to remain within the story that allows you to be confident in what you cannot do as opposed to what is possible for you to do? Or will you reclaim that same principle and invest it in your capacity? Will you choose to be confident in the direction of the output that you want to see? Because what you're actually seeking when you say you want to be confident is to feel confident. But confidence is not a feeling. And the feeling that you seek, if at all, can only happen after the action is taken, not before it. It's like going to the gym. The goal of strength training is to build muscle. The muscle is already present in you, but requires resistance under tension with increased intensity over time for it to be built. So you are not going to externally generate the strength or externally manufacture those muscles that is needed to reach your first weight or that is needed to have the body that you want, because you don't get strength before you pick up a dumbbell. You pick up a dumbbell to build that strength. So the more good reps that you get in, then the more strength that you're able to build over time. It's the same thing with embodying and expressing confidence. It's a muscle that you have to intentionally build consistently with intensity and through different contexts applicable to your unique expression. Different contexts because it's progressive, right? So using the example of going to the gym, you may be able to deadlift 60 kg, right? And you feel strong enough to say, do a cheering competition in your gym where everybody's hailing you, but you're going to second guess yourself if that is quadrupled. If say you have to, your bar is loaded up to 240 kg, you are likely going to second guess yourself. You're likely going to run away from that, and rightfully so, because you don't want to, get yourself injured because you've not tested your strength in that context. You've not built your resistance to the level where you can handle, 240 kg. But there is a version of you that can handle 240 kg. There is the latent potential within your muscle to get to the point where it's able to handle 240 kg, if not more. If you allow yourself to stretch, test it, if you allow yourself to push beyond your boundaries, beyond your current limitations, and you will get new strength. Fundamentally, you have to understand that you are a confident person, because the very act of preventing yourself from taking the actions that are necessary for your next level is based on boldness. You are bold. It's confidence, right? It's confidence. There is what you believe in. There is what you're confident about. You're so confident in the results that you would likely not get that you choose to not take action. You're so confident in the outcomes that may not happen. You're so confident in the realities and the factors that are outside of your control that you choose to sit on your butt and not do what you need to do. That's confidence. It's a paradox, but you've got to recognize the power in your being that you decide to ensure that you're functioning according to how you desire to function, and not without your conscious will, that you are deciding and designing how you're governing yourself, and not just allowing yourself to be governed by parameters that you think are outside your control, because they are not. So today I want to share with you a framework just such that when you're done with this video today, you have something going on to help you fully embody and exude confidence in any context, so you can build rapid mastery. So the first thing is story. We've established that you're always confident, right? That is, confidence is never absent. So the real question is, what story have you been underwriting with your confidence? What narrative have you been financing? Where are you hedging your bets? Because if the story of your inadequacy is louder and more resonant than the story of your capacity, you would always collapse to the dominant story. That's why just believe in yourself. As much as it sounds, exciting, can be shallow advice because it is laced with the assumption that you don't believe in yourself in the first place, which is not true because you always believe in yourself. Maybe just not in the self that you want to embody, but you always believe in yourself. So the question is it what you want to believe? Being confident is not about just believing in yourself. It's believing in a different story of that self. It's believing in a more superior version of yourself. It's believing in your quote unquote, your true self or your wittier self, whatever makes sense for you. First thing you want to do is to isolate and interrogate the story. Now, after identifying the story, the next step is to shift it. And you do that by redirecting that confidence towards a story that serves your highest expression. So instead of constantly thinking about where you're lacking, choose to articulate the areas where you are abundant, right? This seems like common knowledge, but you'll be shocked how we stop ourselves from seeing our own possibilities. And one thing I always recommend is not to try to take this as a chore where you now sit down and you're saying, okay, what is the story? No, simply identify your current story and shift your vantage point instantly. It's not about consistently affirming. And that's a conversation for another day, by the way. It's not about, consistently romancing that story or no, interrupt yourself. When you come in contact with a story that does not represent your ideal, shift to your ideal. What exists in your life currently that validates that as false? Do you understand that? Now, the next step, skill. This is where you add resistance because confidence without competence is delusion. You have to build the actual skills that support your new story. And it's essential that you understand that building a skill is not the same as accumulating knowledge of that skill. As much as theory is critical, what is much more essential when you're trying to build reps is getting it done. You can't keep reading a book about how to diet without actually dieting. You cannot want to be a confident public speaker, and what you're doing is you're reading books on public speaking without actually speaking. Building a skill, is practicing that skill. It is showing demonstrated capability so you can earn your own trust in another story, right? So the kind of skill practice that you engage, it can either reinforce your current confidence loop or disrupt it. So you don't want to reinforce what is happening currently, where you are constantly in that mode of preparation, where you're always tweaking, because the story that undergirds that approach is that you're not good enough and you need to keep preparing. So, when I say practice the skill, I'm not saying to keep doing what you're doing that will reinforce your current loop. You want to disrupt that. So after skill, the logical next step is to stack, to progressively overload, to consistently add that 2.5 kg to your plate every week. That's how you build strength and resistance. This is really about accumulating evidence through consistent action because every small win becomes proof that your new story is true. For this to be sensible, you want to first begin with context where the probability of success is high, then gradually increase the difficulty. So, say for example, you're trying to be a confident speaker, start with your team or in the church, anything that can assure you of immediate success, then you want to move up gradually from there. So, you also want to make sure that you're documenting these things and you are collecting the evidence. And finally, you want to stretch. That is, deliberately put yourself in situations that require you to grow, that pressure test your capacity and sort of challenges your current bandwidth. You want to move up, you want to move high, you want to ascend, you want to ensure that you place yourself in situations where you are truly, truly honing in on who you are. Because that's really what our whole humanity is about. That's really what our whole life, our work, that's what we're here to do, is to progressively master your genius. So that's the framework. Story, what's your story? Scale, build a skill, stack, and stretch. You're not trying to be who you are not. You're not trying to manufacture what does not exist. Your current outcome is proof that you're a confident person. Maybe just not anchored in the story or the awareness that you want it to be in. So what you're doing is you're simply building the foundation that naturally generates the experience of confidence as a byproduct. Let me know what you think in the comments, and please like and share this video. See you in the next one.